Fear sells, and the Democrats know that. And so prepare yourself from here until November 2024. All you're going to hear is how Trump is going to destroy the country. And they're going to play that over and over and over and over and over again until you finally, they hope, believe it. It's what we're seeing over and over again already. About 10 days ago or so, we heard on Morning Joe, I believe it was Joe Scarborough, was talking about, oh my gosh, it's going to be so bad. He's going to put everybody in prison, all his enemies. They're going straight to prison. I mean, they've been talking about he's going to kill. I mean, this is kind of overly alarmist, but this is their narrative. And they're like, if we can just scare people to death, maybe they will vote for Biden. It's pretty bad when that has to be your tactic, right? Like you want to try and deliver on the economy. You want to try and deliver on the border. You want to try and deliver on the international front. But when you can't, you resort to this. Let's play Liz Cheney, who's out everywhere pumping her narrative that everybody else in the Democrat Party has glommed onto. Here she is on the Today Show.
Do you think he would try to stay in power forever?
Absolutely. I mean, he's already done it once. He was stopped, thankfully, and for the good of the nation and the republic. But he said he will do it again. He's expressed no remorse for what he did. You cannot count on a House of Representatives led by somebody like Mike Johnson to stop this president. You can't count on a Senate of Josh Hawleys and Mike Lees to stop Donald Trump.
Okay, so you got it? Just so we're clear, right? If you vote for Trump, then you are ending America. This is what they're saying. In fact, they're so into this narrative. And by the way, they're worried, right? Because recent polls show that Donald Trump is ahead of Biden. So they're like, we got to double down. Well, The Atlantic is doing their bidding, very left-leaning magazine. They got a whole issue devoted to how America will cease to exist should Donald Trump win again. In fact, I'm going to share with you some excerpts. Let's go to this. The danger ahead. Danger, danger, danger. Cells, quote, can proceed in its familiar imperfect way to deal with the many big problems of our time. Stopping Trump would not represent progress on any of those agenda items, but stopping Trump would preserve the possibility of progress. Got to stop him, right? By keeping alive the constitutional democratic structure of the United States. A second Trump presidency, however, they write, is the kind of shock that would overwhelm all other issues. It would mark the turn onto a dark path. You scared yet? One of these rips before and after the society can never reverse. You better be scared. You better be scared. Even if the harm is contained, it can never be fully undone, as the harm of January 6, 2021 can never be undone. The long tradition of peaceful transitions of power was broken that day. And even though the attempt to stop the transition by violence was defeated, the violence itself was not expunged. You know what? I got something to say on that, because there's a very specific narrative that unfortunately might have been a bit of a trap that he walked into. We'll talk about that. But anyway, it goes on to write, the schemes and plots of the second Trump term may be defeated too, yet every future would-be dictator will know a president can attempt a coup and, if stopped, still return to office again. So they want to make sure you're very clear on this, that you're scared. In other words, your country's over. A ballot cast for Trump means the end of America. And now they're making the rounds all over media. You saw Liz, and then the guy David from Atlantic. Well, he said this.
Let's think about that moment on noon of Inauguration Day 2025. And suppose Donald Trump is the person taking the oath. At that point, Donald Trump will be at the center of 4 criminal indictments, 2 federal and 2 state. He may already be on trial. He may already have been convicted. There's nothing that stops a convicted person from being elected president. At the same time, in the state of New York, he's going to have a civil trial to dissolve all his companies for their crimes. So what does he do when he finishes his inaugural address and goes back to the White House at 12:05 or 12:10, skips the parade, he's bored? His very first priority is going to be to bust up the legal system of the United States, because if he doesn't, he probably goes to prison. So that's priority 1, wrecking the legal system of the United States. Richard Nixon lost the presidency because he was accused, because evidence emerged that he had tried to use the power of the United States to stop a criminal investigation. Well, but Nixon had done that secretly. We only knew about it because of the smoking gun tape. Donald Trump...
Keep playing it. But I just want to remind people, well, okay, he's talking about using the power of the presidency, right? He's going to change the court system. That's where David Frum is going with this. But let's be very clear. I mean, heck, guys, what just happened? We were just talking earlier in the show, of course, about Doug Mackey, who was the meme maker who got sent to prison, didn't even have the option of bail for 7 months, about 8 days after Joe Biden came into power. What do you think that was about? I mean, I think about my own personal experience and what I went through on social media because we dared to post an article that linked to the Hunter Biden laptop story. And this was after Biden came into the presidency. I mean, let me be very clear. They're talking about how Donald Trump is going to manipulate the laws. And yet somehow they're saying this with a straight face because you go over to the state of New York, Letitia James, the AG there who campaigned on getting Trump, and she's got this concocted case with Deutsche Bank and Donald Trump, and somehow, he's got to get out of state and they can take his businesses and force him out because Letitia James decides what the value of his assets are rather than the bank itself that was lending the money. I mean, think about that. You imagine the state coming in and saying, okay, you want a new mortgage? We're going to decide what your house is worth rather than you and the bank. So forget that home equity line of credit because we think it's this and say that. I mean, it's so preposterous. It's so bizarre. So they're using the legal system against him. And they're saying, wait a second, he's going to do that to us. I mean, unbelievable. And by the way, just in case you're not fully clear, can we go to Rev Sharpton? I mean, this guy, please, this guy. He's got his own troubles, but he's out there spouting this nonsense. Here we go.
I mean, we are really at a real cross-section of whether we're going to be for democracy or an autocracy or a dictatorship. And I think David and the extensive things they've done in Atlanta, because I've been reading it, is very important. I mean, it's almost stuff you want to pass out in church on Sunday morning.
So we're going to a dictatorship? I mean, frankly, it kind of feels like a dictatorship to me when we only get one narrative out of that whole J6 thing. What I'm talking about here is some specific video, because remember, we never got to see inside what was really going on and going down inside. And then Mike Johnson said, hey, guess what? I'm going to release 40,000+ hours of tape, something that I've long called for. Because why are we supposed to trust Nancy Pelosi's daughter? We're talking about Alexandra Pelosi, who's a documentary filmmaker and was doing some big project for HBO. So her mom invites her in on J6 and says, hey, we might have a big one here. So she's there documenting the entire thing. And this is all they played in a loop. And it's so crazy, right? Because she's getting paid by HBO, one would assume, to do this, and then somehow sells the video to CNN, who then bills it over and over again as a CNN exclusive, right? Hey, they bought it from Alexandra Pelosi, who just happens to be the daughter of the Speaker of the House. I'm sorry, Nancy, did you have no friend at CNN or MSNBC that you could call to get, you really had to call your daughter? Let's look at this. I want to remind you, because this is what you see over and over. Eventually they stopped saying that it was Alexandra Pelosi, but no, this was all her footage.
Never before seen footage. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi shown fleeing the U.S. Capitol as it was under attack on January 6th. The videos captured by her daughter, Alexandra Pelosi, a documentary filmmaker.
We have got to finish the proceedings or else it will add a complete victory.
She provided some of her footage to the January 6th Select Committee, who played clips in their hearing Thursday.
Okay, you get the picture. In other words, as a journalist, I'm just going to say this. I want to be able to examine all sources. I get that not everybody's neutral, right? But that's all the more reason why I need to see what one side is saying. I need to see what the other side is saying. And then, collectively, hopefully we find the truth somewhere. But when you only see what the Speaker of the House's daughter, I mean, you want to talk nepotism, all in the family, right, is putting out, and that's what they show in the hearings. Come on. I mean, that is just blatantly wrong. And so for whatever reason, they kept saying it was a security violation. You couldn't actually show Americans the thousands of hours worth of tape. No, I'm sorry. You know what? You go through and you figure out which ones would actually be some kind of security concern, but you show America what you can show them, because otherwise we're left with only the bias, and I'm talking extreme bias, of Nancy Pelosi's daughter, who was there recording that day. Think about that. So when we talk about Donald Trump and whether or not he would ever surrender, et cetera, next time around, look, you know, my advice would have been, you know what? It was what it was at some point. And so you got to just wave goodbye and get off on your white horse and say, you know what? You're going to miss me. I'll be back. He didn't do that. He's a fighter. He wanted to really have this thing last on the legal front. But all that aside, effectively, he kind of walked into something because there were no cameras except for Nancy's daughter's cameras that were there. And they wanted to be able to say what they're saying right now. So every time you hear this from all of those pundits everywhere, just remember, this is what they're going with, and this is how they think they can win. And, you know, if it bleeds, it leads, right? As they say in the news business. This is what scares people, and so they figure they got a leg to stand on right there. I hope not, because I think a lot is in jeopardy right now, and a lot could be compromised. And we're dealing right now with the after effects, or the actual current effects, of a very untalented administration at every level. They don't understand the economy. They don't understand the border. They do not understand, frankly, the way the world works and international relations. And thus, we've been compromised, America. Please make sure, remember to subscribe to the channel. Remember to share, to like. Let me know your thoughts down there below. We got a lot to talk about.